In the heart of Manhattan, there was a fancy restaurant known for its luxurious atmosphere and live music nights. The place attracted all kinds of people, business tycoons, celebrities, and socialites who loved to dine in style. On this particular evening, the restaurant buzzed with energy. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above, soft jazz played in the background, and waiters moved gracefully between tables, ensuring everyone felt like royalty. Among the guests sat a wealthy woman in her late 40s. She was dressed elegantly, wearing expensive jewelry that caught the light every time she moved her hands. Her table was filled with friends laughing and chatting over glasses of champagne. They were clearly enjoying themselves, soaking up the vibe of the upscale setting. But as the night went on, something happened that would change everything. Across the room, a young man worked quietly. He wasn't a guest, but one of the servers at the restaurant. Despite his role as a waiter, he had dreams much bigger than carrying plates and taking orders. Music was his true passion. Every chance he got, he practiced playing the piano during breaks or late at night when no one else was around. For him, music wasn't just a hobby, it was a way to express himself, to tell stories without saying a word. The restaurant had a beautiful baby grand piano tucked into a corner near the entrance. It was often used by professional musicians hired for special events, but tonight it sat unused, gleaming under the dim lights. The young man glanced at it occasionally as he worked, imagining what it might feel like to sit down and play in front of such an audience. Of course, he never thought he'd actually get the chance, not here, not now. At some point during the evening, the wealthy woman noticed him standing nearby. Perhaps it was because of how attentive he was while serving their table, or maybe it was just boredom creeping in after hours of small talk. Whatever the reason, she looked at him with a mischievous glint in her eye and called him over. "Hey, you," she said, pointing lazily toward the piano. "Why don't you go entertain us? Play something funny. Let's see if you've got any talent." Her tone was light, almost teasing, but there was an edge to her words that made them sting. Her friends giggled nervously, unsure whether to laugh along or shift uncomfortably in their seats. The comment hung in the air like a challenge, or perhaps more like a dare. Everyone knew it wasn't serious, it was meant to be a joke. After all, why would a waiter know how to play the piano? But instead of brushing it off or walking away, the young man paused for a moment. His expression remained calm, though anyone close enough might have noticed the flicker of determination in his eyes. Without saying much, he simply nodded. "All right," he replied softly, surprising even himself. Then, ignoring the whispers spreading through the room, he walked toward the piano. You could hear murmurs breaking out among the diners. Some leaned forward eagerly, curious to see what would happen next. Others exchanged skeptical looks, assuming nothing impressive would come of it. Even the wealthy woman seemed taken aback by his willingness to comply. She'd probably expected him to politely decline or maybe even look offended. Instead, he took a seat at the piano bench, adjusted his posture, and placed his fingers gently on the keys. For a few seconds there was silence, the kind of silence where everyone holds their breath, waiting to see what comes next. And then the first note rang out, clear, precise, and full of emotion. What followed was nothing short of magical. The young man began to play, his fingers dancing across the keys with effortless skill. Each note flowed seamlessly into the next, creating a melody so captivating that it silenced every conversation in the room. People stopped eating mid-bite, forks hovering halfway to their mouths. Waiters froze in place, trays still balanced in their hands. Even the clinking of glasses ceased as everyone turned their attention to the music filling the space. It wasn't just the technical skill that left the crowd awestruck, it was the emotion behind it. The piece he chose was hauntingly beautiful, evoking feelings of longing, hope, and resilience. It was as if the piano itself had come alive, telling a story only the young man truly understood. Those listening couldn't help but feel moved, some even wiping away tears without realizing it. As the final note lingered in the air, the room erupted into applause. People stood up from their chairs, cheering loudly, unable to contain their admiration. Strangers approached him afterward, shaking his hand and congratulating him on the incredible performance. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment for social media. It was clear that what started as a cruel joke had transformed into something unforgettable. Meanwhile, the wealthy woman sat frozen in her seat, her face pale with shock. Her initial smirk had vanished completely, replaced by an expression of disbelief. She hadn't expected anything like this. In fact, she hadn't expected anything at all, just another laughable attempt at humor. But what she witnessed was far beyond anything she could have imagined. And deep down, she knew she'd made a mistake. Little did anyone realize at the time. But this single act of courage and talent would set off a chain reaction that would ripple far beyond the walls of the restaurant. Lives were about to change, including hers, in ways no one could predict. The applause didn't stop for a long time. It was the kind of reaction that made your chest swell with pride, even if you weren't the one playing. People clapped so hard their hands turned red, and some even stood on their chairs to get a better look at the man behind the piano. For those few minutes, it felt like the entire restaurant had been transported. Somewhere else, somewhere where nothing mattered except the music. But as the cheers died down and people slowly returned to their seats, reality began to sink in. The young waiter sat quietly at the piano, his head bowed slightly as if he were gathering his thoughts. He wasn't used to this kind of attention. In fact, he'd spent most of his life trying to stay invisible, working hard without drawing too much notice. Yet here he was, the center of everyone's focus, and it was clear from the looks on their faces that they weren't ready to let him fade into the background again. At first, the wealthy woman who had started all of this stayed silent. She sat stiffly in her chair, her champagne glass halfway to her lips, staring at the piano as though she couldn't believe what she'd just witnessed. Her friends glanced at her nervously, unsure whether to say something or pretend nothing had happened. One of them finally broke the silence. "Wow, I didn't expect that," she said, her voice soft but filled with awe. Another friend chimed in. "That was incredible. Did you see how fast his fingers moved?" The woman nodded, forcing a smile, but there was no hiding the discomfort in her eyes. She hadn't meant for any of this to happen. To her, the whole thing had been a joke, a way to lighten the mood and maybe show off a bit by making fun of someone she assumed wouldn't fight back. But now, sitting there surrounded by stunned faces, she realized she'd underestimated the person she thought she could mock. And worse, she knew everyone else in the room had seen it too. As the evening wore on, the mood shifted. Conversations around the restaurant buzzed with excitement about the unexpected performance. Some diners approached the young man to congratulate him personally, while others whispered among themselves about what they'd just witnessed. A few people even pulled out their phones to record videos of him talking humbly about his love for music. "I've always played because it makes me happy," he told them simply. "I never imagined anyone would care enough to listen." Those words struck a chord with many in the crowd. There was something deeply human about seeing someone pour their heart into something they loved, especially when the world hadn't given them much reason to believe it would pay off. It reminded everyone present that talent doesn't always come wrapped in fancy packages or polished appearances. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to shine. By the end of the night, the story had already begun to spread beyond the walls of the restaurant. Someone uploaded a clip of the performance online, and within hours it went viral. Social media lit up with comments praising the young man's skill and calling out the wealthy woman's behavior. People shared memes and jokes poking fun at her arrogance, but beneath the humor lay a deeper message. Don't judge someone based on what you think you know about them. For the young man, life changed almost overnight. Messages poured in from strangers who wanted to share their own stories of struggle and perseverance. Record labels reached out offering deals, and concert halls invited him to perform. Suddenly, he wasn't just a waiter anymore. He was a symbol of hope for anyone who'd ever felt overlooked or underestimated. But fame came with its challenges. As more people learned about the incident, opinions began to divide. Some praised him for handling the situation with grace and dignity, while others criticized the wealthy woman for using her privilege to belittle someone else. Online forums buzzed with debates about class, race, and respect. Was it fair to call her out so harshly? Or was this exactly the kind of accountability society needed? The wealthy woman found herself caught in the middle of it all. Reporters camped outside her apartment building, eager to get a statement. Critics dissected every word she'd said that night, analyzing her tone and intent. Memes mocking her circulated widely, turning her into a punchline. For someone used to being admired and envied, this sudden shift was devastating. She avoided public appearances, canceled meetings, and tried to lay low until the storm passed, but hiding wasn't going to fix anything. Deep down, she knew she had to face the consequences of her actions. So after days of soul-searching, she decided to speak up. Sitting in front of a camera with trembling hands, she addressed the public. Her voice shook as she admitted her mistake. "What I said that night was wrong," she began, her eyes glistening with tears. "I never meant to hurt anyone, but I understand now that my words were thoughtless and cruel. I hope the young man can forgive me." Her apology was raw and heartfelt, and while some dismissed it as damage control, others appreciated her honesty. They saw it as a step toward growth, a reminder that even those who seem untouchable are capable of change. Meanwhile, the young man handled the situation with remarkable maturity. When asked about her apology during an interview, he responded, "With grace. We all make mistakes," he said, his voice calm but firm. "What matters is what we do afterward." If this situation helps people reflect on how they treat others, then maybe something good can come out of it. His response resonated with millions. It wasn't about revenge or holding grudges. It was about understanding and moving forward. The contrast between his humility and her initial arrogance highlighted a powerful truth. True strength lies not in tearing others down, but in lifting them up. As the days turned into weeks, the ripple effects of that single night continued to unfold. The young man's career skyrocketed, opening doors he'd only dreamed of before. He released original compositions that touched hearts worldwide and became a spokesperson for underrepresented artists everywhere. Meanwhile, the wealthy woman worked quietly to repair her reputation, volunteering with organizations focused on equality and funding programs to support aspiring musicians. Though their paths diverged after that fateful evening, both individuals carried its lessons with them. For the young man, it was a reminder of the power of resilience and self-belief. For the wealthy woman, it was a wake-up call about the impact of our words and actions. Together, they became part of a larger narrative, one that challenged stereotypes, sparked important conversations, and inspired countless others to dream bigger than they ever thought possible. And so, what began as a cruel joke in a crowded restaurant turned into a story of redemption, forgiveness, and the transformative power of music. It proved that sometimes the most unexpected moments can lead to the greatest change, not just for the people involved, but for everyone watching and listening along the way. The days following that unforgettable night at the restaurant felt like a whirlwind for the young waiter. One moment, he was just another face in the crowd, working tirelessly to make ends meet while chasing his dream of becoming a musician. The next, he was thrust into the spotlight, with people from all over the world talking about him. It was overwhelming, to say the least. But despite the chaos, he handled everything with a quiet calmness that left many in awe. Social media played a huge role in amplifying his story. Videos of his performance spread like wildfire, racking up millions of views within hours. People couldn't stop sharing clips of him sitting at the piano, his fingers moving effortlessly across the keys. Comments flooded in, praising not only his talent but also the way he carried himself under pressure. "This is what grace looks like," one person wrote. Another added, "He didn't let bitterness win." That's true strength. But it wasn't just admiration pouring in, it was opportunities too. Music producers reached out, eager to collaborate. Concert organizers offered him slots at prestigious venues. Talk show hosts invited him to share his journey on national television. Suddenly, doors that had once seemed impossible to open were swinging wide for him. And yet, through it all, he remained grounded. He knew this kind of attention could easily go to someone's head, So he made a conscious effort to stay true to who he was. One of the first big breaks came when a well-known record label approached him with an offer to produce an album. At first, he hesitated. Signing a contract meant stepping fully into a world he'd always admired from afar, a world that often felt out of reach. But after some thought, he realized this was his chance to do more than just play music. It was an opportunity to inspire others, to show them that no matter how tough life gets, you should never give up on your dreams. The recording process was intense but rewarding. He poured every ounce of emotion into each track, drawing inspiration from his own experiences, the struggles, the small victories, and the moments of doubt. When the album finally dropped, it debuted at #1 on the charts, surprising even the skeptics. Critics called it a masterpiece of raw emotion and technical brilliance. Fans connected deeply with the lyrics and melodies, saying they felt seen and understood in ways they hadn't before. While the young man's star continued to rise, the wealthy woman found herself grappling with the aftermath of her actions. Public opinion had turned against her almost overnight. Memes mocking her arrogance dominated social media feeds, and hashtags criticizing her behavior trended globally. Some labeled her as tone-deaf and entitled, while others argued she represented a broader issue of privilege and prejudice. For a while, she tried to ignore the backlash. She stayed indoors, avoiding interviews and public appearances. But the criticism followed her everywhere, in online comments, in tabloid headlines, even in whispered conversations among friends. Hiding wasn't helping. If anything, it was making things worse. People began to wonder whether she truly understood the gravity of what she'd done, or if she simply wanted to wait until the storm blew over. Eventually, she realized running away wasn't the answer. If she wanted to move forward, she needed to confront the situation head-on. So, she agreed to sit down for an interview with a respected journalist. The conversation was uncomfortable, to say the least. Cameras rolled as she spoke candidly about the incident, admitting her mistake without trying to justify it. "I thought it was harmless fun," she said, her voice trembling. "But looking back, I see how wrong I was. I hurt someone, and for that, I'm truly sorry." Her apology wasn't perfect. It lacked the polish of rehearsed speeches, but it was genuine. Viewers could see the regret in her eyes and hear it in her voice. Some dismissed it as insincere, accusing her of seeking sympathy to save her reputation. Others, however, appreciated her willingness to acknowledge her faults publicly. They saw it as a step toward accountability, a reminder that growth starts with owning up to our mistakes. Meanwhile, the young man responded to her apology with remarkable maturity. During an appearance on a popular morning show, the host asked him how he felt about her statement. Instead of lashing out or holding a grudge, he chose compassion. "We're all human," he said with a slight smile. "We mess up sometimes. What matters is learning from those moments and doing better next time. I accept her apology because holding on to anger wouldn't help either of us." His response struck a chord with viewers. In a world where cancel culture often reigns supreme, seeing someone extend forgiveness felt refreshing. It sparked conversations about second chances and the importance of empathy. Many praised him for rising above bitterness and choosing understanding. Instead, others reflected on their own lives, wondering if they would have reacted with the same level of grace as weeks turned into months. Both individuals began to rebuild their lives in different ways. For the young man, success brought new challenges. Managing fame wasn't easy, especially when everyone expected him to be flawless. There were days when the pressure felt suffocating, when he questioned whether he deserved all the attention. But he reminded himself why he started playing music in the first place, not for validation, but because it brought him joy. That perspective helped him navigate the highs and lows of his newfound career. He also used his platform to give back. Inspired by the support he'd received, he launched a foundation aimed at helping aspiring artists from underserved communities. Through scholarships, workshops, and mentorship programs, he hoped to create opportunities for others who might not otherwise have access to resources. His goal was simple: to ensure that no one else had to struggle as much as he did to pursue Their passion, on the other side of the spectrum, the wealthy woman worked to repair her image. She volunteered with organizations focused on racial justice and equality. Using her influence to raise awareness about systemic issues, she donated generously to causes supporting education and the arts, funding initiatives designed to empower marginalized voices. While some accused her of performing damage control, others believed she was genuinely trying to make amends. Their paths crossed again, unexpectedly a couple of years later at a charity gala. By then, the young man had become a household name, performing regularly at sold-out concerts and collaborating with top musicians. The wealthy woman, though less visible in the public eye, had quietly built a reputation for her philanthropic efforts. When they saw each other across the room, there was an awkward pause, but also a flicker of recognition. She approached him cautiously, unsure of how he might react. Extending her hand, she said softly, "Thank you for showing me the power of forgiveness. You've inspired me to be better." The young man looked at her for a moment, then smiled warmly. Shaking her hand, he replied, "And thank you for reminding me of the power of resilience. We all have lessons to learn." The exchange lasted only a few seconds, but it spoke volumes. It was a testament to the idea that people can change, that apologies carry weight when they're sincere, and that forgiveness has the power to heal wounds. As they parted ways, the crowd watched silently, moved by the humanity of the moment. In the end, the story became more than just a viral video or a heated debate. It evolved into a narrative about redemption, growth, and the transformative potential of humility. Both individuals emerged from the experience changed, not just in how they viewed themselves, but also in how they interacted with the world around them. Their journey served as a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there's always room for light. The charity gala where their paths crossed again was a glittering affair, held in a grand ballroom adorned with sparkling chandeliers and elegant floral arrangements. The event brought together people from all walks of life: artists, activists, philanthropists, and ordinary folks who cared deeply about making the world a better place. It was the kind of evening that felt both formal and heartfelt, filled with moments of inspiration and connection. When the wealthy woman approached the young man, her steps were tentative, almost hesitant. She wasn't sure how he would react, or if he'd even want to speak to her after everything that had happened. But as she stood before him, extending her hand and offering a sincere "thank you," something shifted in the air. There was no tension, no lingering bitterness, just two people acknowledging the journey they'd been on and the lessons they'd learned along the way. Their brief conversation became the highlight of the night for many attendees. As word spread through the room about their encounter, whispers turned into applause. People clapped not because it was dramatic or scripted, but because it felt authentic. In a world often divided by differences, this moment reminded everyone of the power of understanding and reconciliation. It was proof that even when we stumble, there's always a chance to rise again, and sometimes that second chance can lead to something beautiful. After the gala, life continued to unfold in unexpected ways for both individuals. For the young man, his success only grew stronger. His music resonated with audiences around the globe, earning him accolades and awards. Yet despite the fame, he never lost sight of his roots. He often spoke about the importance of staying grounded, reminding fans that true fulfillment comes not from external validation but from within. "Success doesn't change who you are," he once said during an interview. "It just amplifies what's already inside you." He also doubled down on his commitment to giving back. The foundation he started flourished, providing scholarships to countless aspiring musicians and artists from underserved communities. Workshops and mentorship programs helped young talents hone their skills and build confidence. Many of these beneficiaries went on to achieve their own dreams, crediting him not just for financial support but for believing in them when others didn't. His work became a beacon of hope, proving that one person's efforts could create a ripple effect of positivity. Meanwhile, the wealthy woman quietly reinvented herself. While she didn't seek the spotlight anymore, her actions spoke louder than words. She dedicated herself to causes close to her heart, focusing on education, equality, and access to the arts. Her donations funded community centers, music schools, and outreach programs aimed at bridging gaps between privilege and opportunity. Though some critics remained skeptical of her motives, those who worked alongside her saw genuine passion and dedication. Her transformation wasn't just external, it was internal too. She spent hours reflecting on her past behavior, determined to ensure she never repeated the same mistakes. Friends noticed a change in her demeanor. She seemed more empathetic, more willing to listen. Instead of brushing off uncomfortable truths, she embraced them, using them as stepping stones for personal growth. Over time, she earned respect not for her wealth or status, but for her humility and willingness to evolve. Years later, their lives intersected once more, not in person this time, but through a shared cause. The Young Man's Foundation organized a benefit concert to raise funds for underprivileged youth, and the wealthy woman was among the sponsors. The event drew massive crowds, with performances by renowned artists and heartfelt speeches from beneficiaries whose lives had been transformed by the program. During the concert, a video montage played on a giant screen, showcasing stories of resilience and triumph. One clip featured the wealthy woman speaking passionately about the importance of equal opportunities. Another showed the young man playing the piano, his face glowing with joy as children gathered around him, eager to learn. Watching these snippets, side by side, it was impossible not to see the full circle they'd come. At the end of the night, the young man took the stage for a final performance. As he sat at the piano, the crowd fell silent, anticipation hanging thick in the air. This time, however, he didn't play alone. A group of students from the foundation joined him, their voices blending harmoniously with the melody. It was a powerful reminder of how far they'd all come together. As the last note faded away, the audience erupted into applause, standing ovation style. Tears streamed down faces, not just from emotion but from gratitude for the music, for the message, and for the humanity woven into every moment of the evening. In that instant, it was clear that this story wasn't just about two individuals anymore. It had grown into something larger, a testament to the idea that change is possible when we choose compassion over judgment, forgiveness over resentment, and action over apathy. Looking back, both the young man and the wealthy woman realized how much they'd grown since that fateful night at the restaurant. What started as a cruel joke had evolved into a lesson neither of them could have anticipated. They weren't perfect, they still made mistakes, faced challenges, and questioned themselves, but they were learning. And in doing so, they inspired others to do the same. The young man often thought about the irony of it all. If that woman hadn't made that comment, he might never have had the courage to sit at the piano that night. Without her unintentional push, he might still be dreaming instead of living his dream. Life, he realized, has a funny way of working things out even when it feels chaotic or unfair. For the wealthy woman, the experience taught her that privilege isn't just about what you have, it's about what you do with it. She learned that real influence comes not from power or money, but from the ability to uplift others. By choosing to use her resources for good, she found a sense of purpose she'd been missing for years. In the end, their story became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there's always a chance to rewrite the narrative. It showed that talent can emerge from the most unlikely places, that apologies carry weight when they're sincere, and that forgiveness has the power to heal wounds. Most importantly, it proved that no matter where we start, we all have the capacity to grow, to connect, and to make a difference. And so, what began as a cruel jest in a crowded restaurant turned into a tale of redemption, resilience, and the transformative power of music. It challenged stereotypes, sparked important conversations, and inspired countless others to dream bigger than they ever thought possible. Through laughter, tears, and countless notes played on a piano, it reminded us all of one simple truth: we're all human, and together we can create harmony out of chaos. The story didn't end with the benefit concert or the standing ovation. In fact, it wasn't the kind of story that had a neat conclusion tied up with a bow. Real life rarely works like that. Instead, it unfolded in small, meaningful ways moments that rippled outward, touching lives long after the initial spotlight had faded. For both the young man and the wealthy woman, their journey continued to evolve, shaping not just their own futures but also the world around them. After the concert, the young man returned to his daily routine, though routine was hardly the right word anymore. His days were a whirlwind of rehearsals, performances, and meetings with collaborators from across the globe. Yet despite the demands of fame, he made time for what mattered most, nurturing the next generation of artists. He visited schools, gave master classes, and spent hours mentoring students who reminded him of himself, a little unsure, maybe even doubting their abilities but hungry to create something meaningful. One day, while teaching a group of kids at a community center, he noticed a shy teenager sitting quietly in the corner. The boy barely spoke during the session, letting others take center stage. But when it was his turn to play, something extraordinary happened. His fingers moved across the keys with a confidence that belied his quiet demeanor. The room fell silent as the melody filled the space, raw and heartfelt. Afterward, the young man pulled the boy aside and said, "You've got something special. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." That moment stayed with him. It reminded him why he kept pushing forward even when success brought its own set of challenges. Fame wasn't about applause or accolades, it was about using your platform to lift others up. Every time he saw a spark of potential in someone else, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew firsthand how hard it was to chase a dream without support, and he vowed never to let another talented soul feel invisible. Meanwhile, the wealthy woman continued her work behind the scenes, quietly funding programs and initiatives aimed at leveling the playing field. She no longer sought recognition for her efforts. Instead, she found joy in seeing the tangible impact they had on people's lives. One project particularly close to her heart was a music school in an underserved neighborhood. The school provided free lessons, instruments, and performance opportunities to children who otherwise wouldn't have access to such resources. She often visited the school, watching as kids poured their hearts into practice sessions and recitals. During one visit, she met a girl who reminded her of herself at that age, confident, outspoken, and full of ambition. But unlike her younger self, this girl used her voice not to mock or belittle, but to uplift. She performed a song she'd written about overcoming fear, and by the end, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. As the girl stepped off the stage, the wealthy woman hugged her tightly and whispered, "Never stop believing in yourself." These interactions weren't just acts of charity, they were moments of connection. They reminded her that everyone has a story, a struggle, and a dream worth fighting for. By listening and learning from those around her, she discovered a deeper sense of fulfillment than any material wealth could offer. Her past mistakes still lingered in the back of her mind, but they no longer defined her. Instead, they fueled her desire to do better, to be better. As the years went by, the ripple effects of their actions spread far beyond what either of them could have imagined. Students from the foundation and the music school began making waves in the industry, breaking barriers and challenging stereotypes. Some became professional musicians, others teachers, and a few even started their own nonprofits to pass the torch. Each success was a testament to the power of belief, not just in oneself, but in the potential of others. But perhaps the most profound change was within themselves. The young man learned that true strength lies not in proving people wrong, but in staying true to your values, even when the world tries to pull you in different directions. He realized that vulnerability wasn't a weakness, it was a bridge that connected him to others. Through sharing his struggles openly, he inspired countless individuals to embrace their own imperfections and keep moving forward. For the wealthy woman, the journey was about more than redemption. It was about redefining what it meant to live a meaningful life. She came to understand that privilege isn't something to be ashamed of, it's a responsibility. It's a chance to use your resources and influence to make the world a little brighter, a little fairer, and a little kinder. And while she couldn't undo the past, she could shape the future one act of kindness at a time. Their paths crossed occasionally over the years, usually at events celebrating art and education. Each meeting was warmer than the last, marked by genuine smiles and shared pride in the progress they'd witnessed. They weren't friends in the traditional sense, but they shared a bond forged through growth and mutual respect. Neither of them ever forgot where they'd started, the restaurant, the piano. The laughter turned to silence, but they also understood that their story wasn't just about them. It was about everyone who had been touched along the way. One evening, during a panel discussion on creativity and resilience, the moderator asked the young man how he managed to stay humble despite his achievements. His answer was simple yet profound. I remember where I came from. I remember the nights when I thought giving up would be easier than holding on. And I remember the people who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. That keeps me grounded. Later, the wealthy woman was asked a similar question. What advice would she give to someone trying to make amends for past mistakes? She paused for a moment before replying, "Start by listening. Really listen to the people you've hurt, to the voices you've ignored, to the quiet parts of yourself that know you can do better. Then, take action." Words are important, but actions speak louder. Their responses resonated deeply with the audience, sparking conversations that lasted long after the event ended. People left inspired, carrying with them not just stories of success, but reminders of hope, forgiveness, and the endless possibilities of human connection. In the grand scheme of things, their story was just one among millions, but it stood out because it embodied the complexities of being human, the capacity to stumble, to rise, and to find beauty in the messiness of life. It showed that change begins with small steps, taken imperfectly but with intention. And it proved that no matter how far apart we may seem, we're all connected by our shared humanity. Years later, when someone stumbled upon a video of that fateful night at the restaurant, they might wonder what became of the two individuals involved. But if they dug deeper, they'd find a legacy that stretched far beyond a single performance. They'd discover a foundation empowering thousands, a music school transforming communities, and countless lives forever changed by the courage to dream and the willingness to grow. And so, the story lived on not as a tale of fame or fortune, but as a celebration of resilience, empathy, and the unyielding belief that every person deserves a chance to shine. Because in the end, it's not just about the notes played on a piano or the words spoken in apology. It's about the harmony we create together when we choose to listen, to learn, and to love. The years rolled on and the world kept spinning, but the echoes of that night at the restaurant continued to reverberate. What started as a single moment, a cruel joke, turned into an unforgettable performance had grown into something much larger than anyone could have predicted. It wasn't just about two people anymore. It was about communities, connections, and the countless lives touched by their journey. For the young man, life became a delicate balancing act. Fame brought opportunities he'd once only dreamed of. But it also came with challenges. The pressure to constantly produce hit songs, perform flawlessly, and maintain his image weighed heavily on him. There were days when doubt crept in, whispering that maybe he didn't deserve all the attention. But then he'd think back to those quiet nights practicing on an old keyboard in his tiny apartment, and he'd remind himself why he started this journey in the first place, not for fame, but for love. Love for music, love for storytelling, and love for the way it made him feel alive. One of the most rewarding aspects of his career was seeing how his foundation had blossomed over the years. What began as a small initiative grew into a nationwide movement, providing resources and mentorship to aspiring artists from underserved backgrounds. Schools partnered with the program, integrating music education into their curriculum. Local businesses donated instruments, while volunteers spent weekends teaching kids how to play. The foundation became more than just a charity, it was a family. United by a shared passion for creativity and expression, there were moments that stood out vividly, like the time he attended a regional talent showcase hosted by the foundation. Dozens of students performed, each bringing their unique style and energy to the stage. One girl, barely 10 years old, sang a soulful ballad she'd written herself. Her voice trembled at first, but as she poured her heart into the lyrics, the audience fell silent, captivated. When she finished, the room erupted into applause, and the young man hugged her tightly, tears streaming down his face. "You're going places," he told her. "Don't ever stop believing." These experiences grounded him, reminding him of the bigger picture. Success wasn't measured by chart positions or sold-out arenas, it was measured by the smiles on children's faces, the confidence they gained, and the dreams they dared to chase because someone believed in them. Every success story inspired by the foundation felt like a victory for him too. Proof that kindness and determination could create lasting change. Meanwhile, the wealthy woman found fulfillment in ways she'd never imagined. After years of working quietly behind the scenes, she stepped into a new role as an advocate for equality and access to the arts. She gave talks at conferences, sharing her story openly and encouraging others to confront their biases and use their privilege responsibly. At first, standing before crowds and admitting her past mistakes terrified her. But over time, she realized that vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was strength. People listened not because she was perfect, but because she was honest. Her work extended beyond funding programs. She collaborated with policymakers to push for legislation supporting arts education in public schools. She lobbied corporations to invest in community initiatives, emphasizing the importance of nurturing creativity in young minds. Some efforts failed, meeting resistance from skeptics who dismissed arts funding as frivolous. But she persisted, driven by the belief that art has the power to heal, unite, and transform society. One of her proudest achievements was the opening of a state-of-the-art music and arts center in a neighborhood often overlooked by developers. The facility offered free classes in everything from piano and painting to dance and digital design. On its opening day, hundreds of families gathered to celebrate, their laughter filling the air as kids explored the studios and workshops, watching them interact with instructors and peers. The wealthy woman felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was what real impact looked like, not headlines or photo ops, but tangible change in people's lives, though their paths crossed less frequently. Now, the bond between the young man and the wealthy woman remained strong. They occasionally met at events celebrating their shared mission, exchanging updates and reflecting on how far they'd come. During one such gathering, they found themselves sitting together during a break, sipping coffee and reminiscing about the early days. "I still can't believe you played that night," she said with a chuckle, shaking her head. "If I hadn't been so clueless, none of this might have happened." He smiled, shrugging modestly. "Maybe not the way it did, but I think we were both meant to end up here, doing what we're doing now. Sometimes it takes a mistake, a joke to set things in motion." Their conversation drifted to the future. He spoke excitedly about expanding the foundation internationally, reaching even more communities in need. She shared her plans to partner with tech companies to develop affordable tools for aspiring creators, ensuring that lack of resources wouldn't hold anyone back. As they talked, it was clear that neither of them saw their work as finished. There was always more to do, more lives to touch, more bridges to build. But perhaps the most remarkable part of their story was how it inspired others to take action. Teachers incorporated their journey into lesson plans, using it as an example of resilience and redemption. Parents shared it with their children, teaching them the value of empathy and second chances. Even strangers online found solace in their tale, posting comments about how it encouraged them to pursue their passions or forgive someone who wronged them. One particularly moving message came from a young woman struggling with self-doubt. "I read your story last night," she wrote in an email to the young man. "It reminded me that everyone starts somewhere, and it's okay to stumble along the way. Thank you for showing me that my voice matters." Reading those words, he felt a surge of gratitude, not just for his own journey, but for the opportunity to inspire others to find their own dot as the years passed. Both individuals embraced the idea that legacy isn't built overnight. It's shaped by daily choices, small acts of kindness, and the willingness to keep learning and growing. For the young man, it was about staying connected to his roots, no matter how high he soared. For the wealthy woman, it was about continuing to challenge herself and make amends through meaningful contributions. Looking back, they knew their story wasn't without flaws. Mistakes had been made, feelings had been hurt, and lessons had been hard-earned. But none of that diminished the beauty of what emerged from it. Their journey proved that growth is possible, forgiveness is powerful, and change begins with a single step, even if that step starts with a joke gone wrong. In the end, their story wasn't just about two people finding redemption or achieving success. It was about the countless lives they touched along the way, the students discovering their talents, the teachers inspiring the next generation, and the dreamers daring to hope again. It was about the transformative power of music, the resilience of the human spirit, and the unshakable belief that no matter where you start, you have the potential to create something extraordinary. And so, their story lived on, not confined to memories of a crowded restaurant or a viral video, but carried forward by every note played, every lesson taught, and every heart touched by their journey. Because in the end, it's not the moments of triumph that define us, it's the connections we forge, the lives we uplift, and the love we share that truly matter.